Ashley, we got Between Two Bookshelves today. This is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Legendary Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, legendary, which I might get into this just a little bit later, but there were actually a lot of allegations on him for fraud for this book and a few other things. Yeah, I was taking a look into it, and apparently, a lot of the Carnegie's estate couldn't prove that he ever met Andrew Carnegie. There's a lot of things there's a lot of interesting things in here that some people might be like, okay, maybe he did imagine it. But needless to say, this is like a benchmark. This is a top 10 bestseller self-help book from like the 30s. So this has obviously been a bestseller for a long time.
Yeah.
And kind of like a keystone, like a big book to kind of know. So big takeaways. Do you have any synopsis that you want to kind of run through, or?
I think the main thing for me that I'm taking away is that Think and Grow Rich is really oriented around mindset and kind of having consistency in renewing that mindset, having daily reminders, thinking things into existence, stuff like that. And so that was my biggest takeaway. There's lots of small details that I really liked about it. And there was a couple that I did not. But overall, it's just a really great thing to kind of get you in the right mindset to start working towards what you want to accomplish and have really specific, and in this case, numerically oriented goals, and kind of a timeline for them. So those are my big takeaways.
Have you ever heard of The Secret?
Yes.
I wonder if The Secret is derived from this.
Okay.
Because I think The Secret is maybe a little bit newer, chronologically, I guess, than this. And so super mindset book. This is a lot about thinking things into existence, like creating faith in yourself, and so I kind of on the spectrum, as far as like a skew, I kind of didn't like it that much. I don't like that kind of thing very much. I was introduced to The Secret probably 7 years ago at this point, maybe longer. 7 or 8 years, and I just didn't really like it. I understand, there's studies that say, one basketball team practiced basketball, one basketball team thought about practicing, one basketball team didn't practice at all, and the two teams the team that practiced and the team that thought about practicing, both were like very comparable. So I understand the power of one of the sections was like power of imagination. And I mean, this is a really in-depth book too. I mean, this was a huge, it's like both scaling size. It was just like enormous. With that, maybe we can get into the first topic even, the first criteria here, readability. This to me was behemoth told to you. So it was like him telling you things that he kind of found in his own life, and he had some interviews, but now that I've seen that there have been some interesting allegations against him, I don't know what to really believe. I wonder, maybe it's all in his imagination. I don't know. But needless to say, he went through those reps in his mind, and it was a little redundant on a lot of cases. And some of the topics, I understand why he put them in place the way he put them in place, to kind of like logically tell a story through the book. But sometimes he just brought in things that I was just like, what is going on here? Like, why are we talking about this? Really long-winded. The stories weren't super concise. Readability wise, I put it at like a 1.25.
Yeah, I actually have down 1.5 for readability, because while it is long, I think it's simple enough. Redundancy is what took it down from being completely easy to read. So for me, I have it at a 1.5, but I you threw a wrench in all of my predetermined scores, Attilio, by saying that there's all these allegations against him. Because now I'm like, maybe everything is just fake. But yeah, so I have readability at 1.5.
I don't know how I discovered it too. What I was doing is I was just looking into one of his stories because there's a point in time when he brings up one of his sons and how he kind of interacted with his son to make certain things, happen. I don't want to get too deep into it. And so I was looking into his son because I was like, is this legit or what? And if you look on it on his Wikipedia page, there's like things about fraud and stuff like that after this. This was by far his biggest success. Think and Grow Rich was by far his biggest success. And, this many people who like it and have bought it and recommended it to other people, it can't be like that far-fetched. And there are some super good nuggets in there, I think.
Yeah.
But it makes you question a little bit the stories. So I don't think it's like enough to maybe warrant like knocking it down, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well,
look at it too. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't know going into the book, because I certainly didn't know that. But once I started reading with like critically thinking, like, did this even happen?
Yeah.
So changed my perspective.
What book did you find this?
I found that out about chapter 5 or 6. So pretty early-ish in the book.
Okay.
Some of the way. But that's what I'm saying. Still, like, there definitely were still some nugs in there, even after I knew that.
Yeah. So. Well, towards the end of the book, I kind of started falling off. I was like, okay, I get it. He keeps referencing like other chapters. In my chapter about this, you need to apply things like this, and so it's just repetitive. So let's talk about relevance. I'll let you go ahead on relevance.
I think it's middle of the road. It's a self-help book. He tries to pretty much outline everything that you would need. In a lot of ways, though, he takes a look at it as if he was an employee. In a lot of ways, it wasn't organized well, I think. And I don't think he was trying to speak to specifically a type of person. I don't think he was trying to speak specifically to like an employee or a leader or a follower who wants to become a leader. So in a lot of ways, I think he just tried to cover a lot of bases. And it kind of made it disorganized.
Yeah. I can see that.
So I'm gonna give it like here's the thing, it's a baseline book with revolutionary ideas. Relevancy wise, I'm gonna give it a 1. I'm gonna give it a middle of a
1. A 1. Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that the point I'm about to make is kind of twofold. Up front, I think it's really relevant to people who are wanting help with mindset. As a mindset book, I think this is very relevant to that. Is this everyone's number one choice on how to set up your mindset? Maybe not. Not everyone, when you think about people who write books on mindset or write books on self-help, not everyone says, think of the money you want in 5 years, and that's that. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people are not monetarily driven, and so this would not be the book for them. However, on the other side, while I think it's very relevant to self-help, I think that it was also, like we mentioned before, written in the 30s. And so a lot of things have changed. And there are still a lot of things that are very applicable, which is our next category, but not all of the things that he talked about are relevant at this point. There were several industry mentions, like these are the industries that are looking for new leaders right now, journalism, this and that. And so that's not necessarily the truth anymore, or what is relevant. And so for that reason, I'm giving it a 1.25.
Okay, yeah. And I mean, yeah, I pulled some examples from this book probably for the last 2 weeks, and I'm going to be pulling examples from it in the future for sure. Like I think I used one of his Henry Ford stories last night, and I was just in conversation with someone. And so, yeah, I mean, it definitely hits it, but yeah, it was written in the 30s, right? So it is a little outdated. And there's definitely newer methods. So,
For sure.
that's right.
Applicability.
So,
I'll go ahead and start. You want to go?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay. Applicability. I think the applicability is a little bit middle of the road for me. I don't think it's difficult to apply these concepts. I think they're very simple and very straightforward. But the difficult part about it is being consistent as far as what he's wanting or telling you, like Attilio was saying, he's telling you need to do in order to accomplish your goals. And so if you're not consistent with that, I don't think his methodology will be effective. So has something with our internet, but I think for me, it's probably going to be a 1.5.
Okay. Yeah. As far as applicability, Think and Grow Rich. So there's a lot in there. I mean, how many core principles was it? 10 core principles or something like that. And a lot of them you need to like kind of build off of each other. I kind of liked in some senses how he organized things where it really is a hierarchy, and it's honestly a hierarchy of how people, how I've seen other self-help people, even like Tony Robbins or like, what's the dude's name? Garrett White, I think is his name, from Wake Up Warrior. And basically, there's like tiers of things that you need to do. Top of the thing is get your mind straight and figure out how to execute. Be confident in your stuff. And then at the very last thing, it's like, then execute, then do it. And by then you should have so much preparedness taken care. And so, if you don't plan for success, if you don't think about success early, the chances of you accidentally succeeding become zero, right? So in a lot of ways, a lot of this is kind of like laid out and done for you already. The way that he kind of explained it, where he made it sound like cryptic. He made it sound like mysterious, like you need to master these in order, and once you figure it out, you should just be able to drop this book right away and go to it. It felt like it was more of like a scheme or something, like he was trying to like blow his own shit up, or like it was like a mystical book of some kind. Applicability, I mean, I agree with you. You need to have the consistency there if you want to try to apply it. A lot of it may have been a little far-fetched for some people. A lot of it might be, kind of a little bit weird. But a lot of it is like, if you just extract what he was saying, and I think like critically thought and try to apply it for yourself, I think that it would work really well and you could do a bunch of cool things. But again, that's a bunch of stuff all of a sudden. So now you start having to do a bunch of things. So I think I'm going to give it like I think I'm going to agree with you on that score and just hand it a 1. Just in that, it knowing that, this is a book that you kind of do have to maybe apply your own way and use the principle. Do it kind of your own way. Do it your own style to make sure you're getting the rep. And he explains how to do that, right? He explains like, if you want to be able to imagine yourself doing this, and so, or you want to be able to cozy up next to a leader, sometimes that merits a pay cut, or you want to do so. Yeah, I think I'll give it a 1.
Okay. It's funny. This book is so interesting. And as we kind of flow into our next category of value versus expectation, I listen to it on Audible, not audioable, Audible, as I have been with a lot of the books that we've been doing. And I've enjoyed it a lot, but I had this playing out loud, and my husband was like, "What is this?" Because it kind of sounds weird on Audible. It's a very like, it sounds like it's recorded in the 30s, and it's just kind of, he's like, "What are you listening to?" And so it's really funny. And so as far as value versus expectation, Antonio, I know you recommended this book for the Between Two Bookshelves book list. Tell me about that.
So, there have been a few people that are kind of like industry leaders as far as advertising that have recommended this book. And a lot of, I've had people go as far as saying, how do you figure your shit out and then get it together and then get rich, right? And they've said, read, think, and grow rich, come up with a business plan, execute. Like, literally, that's what some people have said. And they're like industry leaders.
Wow.
And so I kind of had some high expectations going into this. And once I started reading it and going through it, I was just like, oh yeah, this is just like The Secret. Oh yeah, this is just like, I feel like this is the foundation for like a lot of things that already exist, like right now. But maybe the things that exist now have been like fleshed out a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then I also think, and in some ways, I think that might be like why this is such a baseline book, because like it is kind of like the baseline and the foundation for a lot of things that exist. But yeah, and especially figuring out that there were some like issues with fraud and some other things with the book, I was just kind of like, oh, come on, man, you're not making this book easy to like. And so I'm gonna give it a 0.5 for value versus expectation.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that if you're in the space and you're looking at things already, this is a beginner book. I think where this would impact is if you had 3 books in front of you that you knew they were beginner books, and this was one of the beginner books. I think that would be spot on, and that's perfect. Otherwise, it's very foundational. Like, if you have been acquainted with any self-help books, period, this is not groundbreaking for you. So 0.5 for me.
Okay. So for me, I had pretty high expectations as well, just because you were like, you've got to read this book. Everybody says, like you were saying, it is a big deal. It's going to like change, people have been saying it's going to change your life, And for me, there were some things that were pretty like, I think I should say reawakening, because it's not that I didn't already know that, but reading it in this context, it was like, yes, that is spot on. I need to start doing that, or I need to start thinking of what I want in the future, and that kind of stuff. So it was more of like a reawakening, if you're not, like Attilio was saying, a beginner, kind of a reminder. And I think on your point of it being a beginner book, it has to be a dedicated beginner book, because that's a lot to sift through. And I think sift being the important word, because like we've been saying, you don't necessarily want to do everything. So for me, I'm going to give it a 1, because I don't know that I was necessarily like disappointed where I need to give it below a 1, but I was not blown away, and it didn't necessarily meet my expectations. So I'm going to go right in the middle, a 1.
Oh.
Lastly,
Oh boy.
The Butterfly Effect.
Butterfly.
I feel like you're going to give it a low score again on this one.
So the Butterfly Effect for us, let's explain it for anybody who's new checking us out. The Butterfly Effect is how excited are we to apply what was in this book, essentially? Does it give us butterflies in our stomach, right? Does it make us rearing and ready to go to apply or to use this book somehow? There is a lot of information in there. There are a lot of quotes in there.
Yeah.
And I kind of, being Italian, my family used like adages and little quotes and little things a lot, like weirdly, to have like moral of the story type things. And so like I actually use quotes and adages a lot to just help me always keep my mind framed for something, or always have a situation to kind of reference. So I know that Henry Ford used this technique when he was getting prosecuted, to explain that he was really an educated man to the jury, and he didn't himself need to know. So like there's like an interesting situation where there's like a lot of stories in there, and there's a lot of different like angles to come at things. Like there's a point in time when he talks about like the 6 core fears, and like some of that stuff is so interesting, and you maybe know it, but it's never been like written or like put in front of you. So I think I am going to use this book in the future, like with things that I might be able to just like reference or use as like an example. It in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a holy grail. It's kind of like an Oedipus, or like a Ulysses, or like an epic, where there's just like so much laid out. It doesn't really have like a specific topic. It's just everything, like how to think and grow rich, right? And so I think I will be using it. As far as like butterfly effect, it's definitely not a 2, but I think I'm going to give it like a 1.75. Because I know that I'm going to be using stories. I know that I'm going to be using quotes. I know that I'm going to be pulling from this in the future. I'm not going to like maybe sit down, write it down, like schedule time. Like the one thing I literally put on my calendar, like things that I need to do. And to me, that's kind of like a 2. That's like, shit. I'm taking action now. But this, and if you haven't seen our one thing review, definitely check that out. But yeah, this is kind of like a 1.75 range, or what did I say? 1.5, 1.75?
75. 1.75.
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna stick with for this book. What do you think?
So for me, this book does not go without flaws. Like there's so many things that I could pick apart in this book, particularly whenever he started talking about like men and women and marriage and sex and all of that stuff. Like I was like, dude, what the hell? But I know it's such a long time ago and it was just a different time, but I still don't think that's definitely not applicable, relevant, or value versus expectations. None of mine.
There's like some weird racist shit in there. Like, oh my god, it was kind of weird.
A lot of things. I think this book could be so much better if like maybe if he was so successful, one of his successful children revamped it and made it like with the times, or like less racist and less misogynistic and like less all of these things. And so I think I was still like, okay, let me say it this way. Attilio, I was excited about it. I knew that I considered the time it was written, and I tried to take that out of it. And I tried to take the value that was given to me. But then also you threw the wrench, like I've been saying, with the fraud. And so now I'm like rethinking everything. But before that, I had rated it in 1.75 because I do think that's why it's so popular. It's because it is a little motivating. You're talking about big numbers here, and anytime you talk about big numbers, you kind of like get a little pep in your step, like yes, I want that in the future. And so my score is also at 1.75.
Sweet, sweet. So total scores, mine came out to be 5.5. You got a 7?
Yeah.
Solid 7? Yeah, honestly, I think it was just like really too hyped up, and there was like all these micro errors for me kind of added up. I would still recommend it, but like I was saying, I would recommend it to a beginner that wanted 3 books to read, and I would say Think and Grow Rich should be one of those 3 books that if you've never read a self-help book, if you've never been introduced to the space, I think Think and Grow Rich is a solid starting point. And just know that maybe it's a little left field. Know that it was written in the 30s. But I mean, I got some fat daddy nugs from the book. Like there were some interesting, like really thought-provoking things, really like interesting things to take away from it still. Even though I rated it a 5.5, I still think it's worth the critical thinking and the difference in thinking from the book. So
I think that reading this book has great benefit. I agree. There's so many things to critically think on, and just the fact that it gets your mind moving and starting to process all of these different concepts, I think is very valuable. I personally don't have a lot of people in my life today that I would recommend this book to, but I will say that I'm glad that I have read it and can say that I have read it. So.
Well, cool. What's our book for next week? What do we got? Or next in 2 weeks?
I need to double check. Guys, we have really been ramping it up, and we love it.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep these a little bit shorter. You'll have to let us know either on the comments in YouTube or on Twitch or wherever you see us on Facebook, maybe. If you like them a little bit shorter, we're trying to keep them super concise and super quick, but just definitely a little bit of feedback goes a long way. We want this to be a little bit of a review, and maybe we can have like a short review and then a long form like book club style thing on the side or something. That might be a different thing that we do, but having the input would be really nice. To see kind of what you guys want to see. So
up next, we have Plan D by Mike Maddock.
Plan D, it's going to be right here.
Over there.
For those of you on YouTube.
Yes. So I'm excited about this book. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard a lot about it. But stay tuned because I'm hoping it's going to be good.
How did we get information for Plan D? What did we get a recommendation for this? Or?
I found it.
Okay, cool.
I found it. I was just doing some research, and it was, I think, on like an Amazon top business book list. So that's where it's.
Well, good. That's good. We kind of went through a string of self-help books actually. So good to get to maybe some business practicality here, maybe a few other things. So sweet.
Awesome.
I guess with that being said, we can cash out our Between Two Bookshelves on Think and Grow Rich. Thank you, Napoleon Hill. Thank you, Ashley. And thanks to all of you guys for checking us out right now.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Be sure to stay tuned. We have, like Attilio was saying, we have this streaming on several different platforms right now. So if you're not checking us out on one or the other, please do so. We would greatly appreciate it. All right. Catch you guys next time. Peace.